What if the chaos in your life isn't a setback, but a setup? What if the changes you fear are actually shaping the strongest version of you? We live in a world that constantly shifts. Relationships end, jobs disappear, plans unravel overnight. And most people panic, they resist. But the Stoics, they welcomed it. They believed every disruption was a path to growth. Zeno lost everything in a shipwreck and found philosophy. Marcus Aurelius ruled through plague and found clarity. Seneca was exiled and still kept his peace. These weren't just men who endured change, they used it. In this video, you'll discover how Stoic wisdom was designed for unstable times like these. You'll learn to face disruption not with fear, but with discipline, strength, and perspective. This isn't about escaping chaos, it's about transforming through it. So if you're ready to stop fearing change and start mastering it, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and let's begin.
Number 1.
Adversity as opportunity, Amor Fati. Picture a forest after a wildfire, charred earth, scorched bark, and silence. It looks like devastation, but beneath that blackened soil, something profound begins. The lodgepole pine, native to North America, has cones sealed tight by resin. They do not open gently over time. They need heat. They need fire. Only when the flames rage through do those cones melt open and release the seeds of new life. What appears to be destruction is, in fact, the moment of release, the beginning of something stronger, something inevitable. This is precisely how the Stoics taught us to see adversity, not as an interruption, but as initiation, not something to escape, but something to embrace. This is the heart of Amor Fati, the love of fate, not passive submission, not bitterness dressed as maturity, but an active, deliberate, almost defiant embrace of what life hands you, especially the parts you didn't want. Marcus Aurelius captured this mindset in a single image. A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. In other words, your struggles, your heartbreaks, your failures, they're the logs, and your character is the fire. The more that's thrown at it, the brighter it can burn, so long as you choose to burn. But how do you do that when you feel like life is unraveling? The answer lies in understanding that pain is a constant. No one gets a pass. The only difference is this: do you collapse in the face of it, or do you use it? This isn't just abstract. Look at Viktor Frankl, a Jewish psychiatrist who was imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps. While his suffering is beyond what most of us can imagine, his insight is eternal. Between what happens and how we respond, there is a space, and in that space is our power. He chose meaning over despair, purpose over pain. His book, Man's Search for Meaning, is not a story about endurance, it's a manual for transformation. And though his context was different, his mindset mirrored theirs. You don't have to experience catastrophe to practice this. In modern life, adversity often arrives in quieter, slower forms. A sudden job loss, a relationship that crumbles, a health scare, a betrayal by someone you trusted. And yet, each of these is a fire. Each one holds the possibility of opening something within you that comfort never could. Some people hear Amor Fati and mistake it for resignation. So I'm just supposed to accept whatever happens? No. Amor Fati is not passive. It's not about letting life walk all over you. It's about meeting every blow with the posture of a martial artist. Not because you enjoy the pain, but because you're trained to absorb it, redirect it, and rise from it. Epictetus, who was born a slave and lived with physical disability, posed the question, what would have become of Hercules if there had been no lion, hydra, stag, or boar? What would he have done in the absence of such challenges? Without struggle, there is no strength. Without difficulty, there is no clarity. Without fire, there is no opening of the seed. In a culture obsessed with ease, comfort, and convenience. This idea sounds extreme, but that's why it works. The Stoic mindset is a rejection of the modern myth that happiness comes from eliminating difficulty. The truth is, meaning comes from what you do with difficulty. Amor Fati doesn't mean liking every outcome. It means choosing to respond to every outcome with purpose. It means refusing to label what happens to you as either good or bad, and instead asking one deeper question: what will I make of this? And this is where real strength is born, not in outcomes but in orientation. Not in avoiding fire, but in becoming something that thrives because of it. That is why the Stoics practice hardship voluntarily, why they visualize loss, why they rehearse discomfort. Not because they were masochists, but because they understood something modern culture forgot. The path to peace is not the absence of suffering, it's the alignment of your character with reality. You don't become calm by escaping storms. You become calm by learning to stand still inside them. And you don't learn that by waiting for ease. You learn it by meeting adversity with clear eyes, steady breath, and a spirit that says, I will not waste this pain. Even in the quietest tragedies of daily life, a business falling apart, a dream delayed, a love that disappears, there's a decision: collapse or create, curse it or grow through it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." And in that one line is the entire Stoic attitude toward disruption. Your obstacles are not interruptions to your path. They are your path. And when you accept that, something powerful happens. Fear loosens its grip, panic fades, and in its place, something deeper rises. Faith in the process, faith in yourself, faith in the fire. So do not pray for ease. Do not run from difficulty. Become the one who welcomes the fire, not for the pain it brings, but for the seeds it will unlock, for the strength it demands, for the clarity it carves into your soul. You don't have to love the suffering, but you can love who you become because of it. That is Amor Fati.
Number 2.
The obstacle is the way. Imagine losing everything you thought defined you. Your wealth, your identity, your plans, overnight. That's exactly what happened to Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism. He was once a successful merchant, sailing the Mediterranean with a ship full of precious cargo. Then one day the ship went down, and with it, everything he thought he was. He washed up in Athens, broke and directionless. But what he found wasn't despair. He wandered into a bookstore, discovered philosophy, and began a journey that would redefine the next 2,000 years of thought. Years later, when asked how he began this path, Zeno answered, "I made a prosperous voyage when I suffered shipwreck. That's not denial, that's transformation." He didn't pretend the loss didn't happen. He simply decided that what looked like the end could be used as a beginning. This is the essence of one of Stoicism's most empowering and misunderstood teachings. The obstacle is the way. What blocks your progress isn't the enemy, it's the assignment. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled during plagues, invasions, and betrayal, wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." These weren't motivational quotes. They were survival notes, Stoic principles carved under pressure. You don't get to choose your disruptions, but you do get to choose your response. And your response, that's where your power lives. Most people respond to difficulty with resistance. They curse the detour. They panic at the loss. They try to force the plan back into shape. But the Stoic pauses. He breathes and he asks, "What is this here to teach me?" Because adversity always carries a message, and the wise know how to read it. Take Thomas Edison. In 1914, a fire destroyed his entire research campus. Decades of work gone in hours, his response? He told his son, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." Then he got back to work. Within weeks, he was inventing again. He didn't allow the fire to burn his spirit. He let it burn away distraction. That is what Stoicism trains you to do, to take the hit and turn it into fuel. This doesn't mean pretending that pain doesn't hurt. It means believing that pain has value, because sometimes what breaks you apart is the only thing strong enough to break you open. The Stoics believed that hardship was not random, it was refining, Seneca said. Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. Pain is not punishment, it is preparation. The obstacle doesn't block the path. It is the path, not away from who you are, but toward who you were meant to be. Think about your own life. That heartbreak that crushed you, it also forced you to find yourself again. That failure that humiliated you, it also humbled you into growth. That loss you couldn't control, it also revealed what you could. The Stoic doesn't just endure the storm, he studies it. He lets it shape him, not into a victim, but into a vessel, a channel for strength, for presence, for clarity. Marcus Aurelius didn't write meditations to sell ideas. He wrote them to survive his own battles. In his darkest hours, he turned to the page and reminded himself that struggle was sacred, that chaos could be useful, that everything thrown at him was material for growth. The Stoic sees obstacles like a sculptor sees a slab of marble. Most people see a block. He sees form, hidden in resistance. He knows the chisel is pain, but the statue is power. And this doesn't just apply to emperors or philosophers. It applies to you, today, right now. In the middle of your setback, the question isn't whether you'll face difficulty, it's whether you'll use it. Every delay, every rejection, every failure has the potential to carve something out of you. Something rare, something resilient. But only if you choose not to run from it. Only if you stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" That's why Stoics practice negative visualization. That's why they rehearse loss, not because they want to suffer, but because they know life will bring suffering, and they'd rather meet it prepared than paralyzed. Remember Epictetus, born into slavery, crippled in body, freed only later in life, and yet his spirit was freer than most emperors. Why? Because he refused to believe that external obstacles could imprison the inner man. He said, "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. And when you master your judgments, you reclaim your peace." That is the Stoic superpower, to turn breakdowns into breakthroughs, to see adversity not as something to escape, but as something to engage. Even nature teaches this. A tree grows stronger not in soft soil, but in wind. A river does not stop at the boulder. It bends around it, deepens beside it, or carves straight through it over time. You don't need life to be easy. You need to be equipped. And Stoicism equips you with the one mindset no circumstance can destroy. This is not happening to me. This is happening for me. So the next time something blocks your path, whether it's a loss, a delay, or a crisis, ask yourself, what if this isn't in the way? What if this is the way? Zeno would have remained a forgotten traitor if his ship hadn't sunk. Marcus would have been a lesser man if life hadn't pressed him into greatness. And you may never uncover who you really are until something falls apart, and you choose to rise anyway. Because when the obstacle becomes the way, you become unstoppable. That is the Stoic path.
Number 3.
Change is the nature of life. There's a quiet illusion that creeps into our thinking, that life should be stable, that people will stay the same, that the things we build will last forever. But the Stoics warned us. This illusion is the root of suffering, because reality doesn't bend to permanence. It flows, it shifts, it sheds what no longer fits. Marcus Aurelius saw this clearly. He wrote, Observe always that everything is the result of change. The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. For him, change wasn't a problem to solve. It was a law to understand, a rhythm to move with, not against. Think about it. The river never holds still. The sky never repeats the same cloud pattern twice. Even your body, right now, is in motion. Cells dying, cells regenerating, time moving whether you notice it or not. And yet we cling. We try to freeze moments, hold on to people, preserve comfort. But to resist change is to resist life itself. Let's take a look at Queen Elizabeth II, an icon of tradition and continuity. She reigned for over 70 years. And yet even she knew that survival meant adaptation. Under her rule, the monarchy modernized, customs evolved, institutions bent toward relevance. Why? Because even the oldest symbols must change to endure. The crown didn't survive because it stood still. It survived because it flowed forward, one concession, one evolution at a time. The Stoics were not surprised by loss, by endings, by transformation. They expected them. They welcomed them. Not because they lacked emotion, but because they had trained their perception. Marcus didn't just say, change is constant. He said to love it, to see it as nature's way of pruning, refining, renewing. Here's the problem. Most of our anxiety comes from trying to grip what's already slipping. A job title, a relationship, a version of ourselves that no longer fits. We believe we're losing something, but we're often just witnessing life reshaping us, and when we fight that, we suffer. The Stoic learns to hold loosely, to engage deeply. Yes, but without the desperation of ownership, because nothing and no one is truly ours. Not forever. Everything is on loan, and the wise learn how to say thank you and let go. Seneca wrote, "No man steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man." This was not fatalism, it was freedom, the freedom to meet each moment as new, the freedom to release the illusion that we are owed consistency, the freedom to love without clutching, to work without attachment, to live without illusion. Think of Steve Jobs, a man whose entire career was marked by transformation. Fired from Apple, the company he founded, only to return years later and reinvent it completely. Did he cling to the past? No, he embraced change. He even said, "Death is very likely the single best invention of life. It clears out the old to make way for the new." That's not Stoicism in label, but it's Stoicism in essence. Embrace impermanence, use it. Still, we resist. We say things like, "I wish things could just go back to how they were," but that wish is based on an illusion. There is no going back. There is only forward, with more wisdom, more grace, and more clarity than before. In your life right now, something is changing. Maybe someone you love is pulling away. Maybe your career is shifting. Maybe you're outgrowing a version of yourself you used to protect. And your instinct might be to hold on, to push back, to beg for stasis. But the Stoic invites you to do something else, to lean in, to breathe, to ask, what is this transition trying to reveal? What strength is emerging in me because of this shift? What beauty exists in letting go? You're not meant to be the same, and neither is anyone else. Children grow, friends drift, beliefs evolve, roles end. That is not failure. That is the fabric of life weaving forward. What withers was never wasted. It served, it taught, and now it passes. The Stoics believe that true peace doesn't come from freezing the world, but from aligning with its flow. The wind doesn't apologize for changing direction. The tree doesn't resist autumn. And you are not a stone. You are a soul in motion. So why do we fear change so deeply? Because it reminds us we're not in control. It humbles us. It dismantles the ego's illusions, but it also, if you let it, connects you to something larger, something older, something trustworthy. Marcus Aurelius described life as a series of waves. He said, like a rock thrown in the air, it loses nothing by coming down, gain nothing by going up. The motion itself is natural. The rise and fall are not personal. They're universal. You're not being punished. You're being carried. The change isn't against you. It's simply the rhythm of existence. The Stoic trains himself to see clearly, to accept gracefully, to love what is, not what was, not what should be, what is. Because in that clarity, there's strength. In that surrender, there's dignity. And in that flow, there's peace. So the next time something shifts, don't tighten your grip. Loosen it. Don't panic. Observe. Don't cling. Align. Let the change reveal you. Let it refine you. Let it move you closer to your true self. Not the fixed identity you constructed to feel safe, but the deeper self that grows, adapts, and evolves with life itself. Because the truth is, permanence is an illusion, but growth is real. And to grow, you must move. To move, you must let go. That is the Stoic way.
Number 4.
Our unchanging job. The world will shift, the markets will rise and fall, relationships will come and go, seasons will turn, technology will evolve faster than our minds can absorb. But in the middle of that storm, what is your job? This was a question the Stoics asked constantly. When everything outside of you is moving, what is the one thing that should remain still? The answer, they said, is your character, your virtue, your inner code. Because while the world changes, your responsibility to live with reason, courage, justice, and self-control does not. Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events, realize this, and you will find strength. That's not just a comforting thought, it's a strategy for survival. When the economy collapses, when a partner leaves, when the spotlight dims, the only thing you still control is how you show up, how you act, what kind of human being you choose to be. Consider the emerald. It doesn't stop being an emerald just because no one's looking. It doesn't lose its value just because someone else prefers rubies. It stays what it is, refined, quiet, luminous, regardless of circumstance. That's you, or rather, that's the you the Stoics call you to become. Someone whose goodness isn't performative, but principled. And here's what's so powerful about that. When your identity is built on values, not outcomes, you become invincible to external chaos. If you only feel worthy when you're winning, loved, praised, or promoted, you'll always be vulnerable, because those things are temporary. But if you anchor your worth in your virtue, no one can take that from you. Not failure, not betrayal, not even loss. Epictetus made this crystal clear. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Meaning stop talking about who you are. Start proving it through action. Anyone can claim to be kind when life is easy. But can you stay kind when you're tired? When you're disappointed? When someone misunderstands you, criticizes you, leaves you? That's the Stoic test. Not how loud you are, but how steady, not how popular, but how principled. Even in exile, Epictetus taught freely. Even as emperor, Marcus Aurelius wrote humbly, their situations couldn't have been more different, but their job was the same, to live rightly, to stay aligned with nature, not with trends. Let's bring this to today. Think about Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, a man who dedicated his life to teaching children about kindness, emotional honesty, and human dignity. He wasn't flashy, he didn't chase trends, he didn't raise his voice, but his consistency, his virtue, his quiet service. That's what gave him impact. He once said, life is deep and simple, And what our society gives us is shallow and complicated. That's Stoicism in action. Strip away the noise. Focus on what truly matters. Or think of the late Toni Morrison. She once said, "You are not the work you do. You are the person you are." That's a Stoic truth in poetic form. She won prizes, she earned acclaim, but none of that defined her. What defined her was her willingness to speak truth, even when it was unpopular. She stayed faithful to her craft and her conscience, not the applause. Your job is not to be impressive, it's to be true. Your job is not to be liked, it's to be just. Your job is not to win every argument, it's to stay in integrity with yourself, even if it costs you something on the outside. Why? Because the outside always changes. But your principles, those are your compass. The Stoics believed that your only possession, the only thing that really belongs to you, is your moral purpose. They called this your prohairesis. It's the seat of your will, the part of you that decides what's good, what's bad, what's worth doing, what's worth avoiding. Everything else, your health, your finances, your reputation, is borrowed, but your moral choice, that is yours, and how you use it is what makes you free. We're often tempted to outsource this to say, "I'll be calm if others are nice to me," or "I'll be honest if they're fair." But that's not strength, that's conditional character. The Stoic flips the script and says, "I will be just because justice is right. I will be disciplined because discipline is good. I will be honest because I do not want to become a liar, even if lying would be easier." You may not always feel like it, but feelings are not your master. Feelings rise and fall, twist and turn. Your task is not to suppress them, but to remain guided by something deeper. And that deeper thing is your choice, your duty, your job. So when you wake up and the world seems uncertain, when your plans fall apart, when people act unfairly or forget you, remember your job hasn't changed. Stay clear, stay consistent, stay committed to the person you said you wanted to become when life was easier. Because that's when it counts. Not when it's calm, but when it's chaotic. Not when everyone's watching, but when no one is. That's the real test. That's the Stoic arena. You're not here to control the tides. You're here to build the kind of soul that can stand firm while the waves crash. And the more you practice this, returning to your values, returning to your virtues, the less the chaos matters. Not because it disappears, but because it no longer defines you. That is your unchanging job.
Number 5.
Practical tools for an unstable world. The Stoics didn't just sit in ivory towers writing about virtue. They lived in a world that was brutal, chaotic, and deeply unstable. Plagues, assassinations, exile, famine, betrayal. Yet they left us not just theories, but tools, mindsets, practices, internal technologies for surviving what we now call life. Because here's the truth. Instability is not new. It's just louder now. The news cycles faster. The systems are more complex. But the emotional chaos, the fear, the helplessness, the noise, has always been part of the human experience. That's why Stoicism feels so modern, because its tools were made for this, for us. The first tool, expect disruption, Seneca said. The unexpected blow lands heaviest, meaning it's not the chaos that breaks you. It's your surprise that chaos exists, so train for it. Each morning, imagine setbacks, which leads to the second tool. Think like an athlete, Marcus wrote. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. When a boxer is hit, he doesn't cry that life is unfair. He adjusts. When a tennis player misses the shot, she doesn't blame the ball. She recalibrates. That's how the Stoic thinks. Life throws something unexpected. You return serve, you pivot, you respond. Not with drama, but with movement. The Stoic trains for life the way an athlete trains for the match. Every obstacle is part of the training. Every loss is information. Every fall is a step forward. Third tool, zoom out. One of the most powerful Stoic strategies is what modern astronauts call the overview effect. From space, borders disappear, petty politics vanish. You realize Earth is just a fragile ball floating in infinite silence. Marcus practiced this. He would mentally rise above himself, above Rome, above humanity, and say, "Look how small this moment is. Look how brief your anger will last. Look how many others have come and gone, just like you." When you zoom out, you shrink the problem. You widen your lens, and suddenly what felt like the end of the world becomes a single pixel in your larger journey. Fourth, focus only on what you can control. Epictetus hammered this constantly. He said, "Some things are up to us and some things are not." Your thoughts, your actions, your choices, those are yours, everything else. Weather, markets, others' opinions, pandemics, politics, those are not. If you spend your energy where you have no power, you waste your life. But if you concentrate your power on what's in your hands, you build strength, you build peace, and you build momentum. Look at Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist imprisoned in a Nazi concentration camp. He was stripped of everything: family, clothes, freedom, even his name. But he discovered one thing they couldn't take. His response, he wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." That's Stoicism, alive in suffering. Control the inner, accept the outer, move forward. Fifth, use voluntary discomfort. Seneca didn't just write about hardship, he practiced it. He would sleep on the floor, wear rough clothes, eat cheap food, not because he was poor, but because he didn't want to be owned by comfort. He wanted to remind himself, "I can survive without luxury, I can endure loss, I'm not fragile." Today we drown in convenience, but the Stoic says, challenge yourself, fast, wake early, detach from your phone, not for punishment, but for strength, because the more you test yourself in peace, the more ready you are in chaos. Sixth, journal ruthlessly. Marcus wrote to himself every night. Not for an audience, not to be remembered, but to process, to reflect, to clean his inner house. That journal became the Meditations, one of the greatest books in history. But to him, it was therapy. It was training. It was how he stayed grounded while ruling an empire. You don't need to be emperor to do this. Just write. Ask, what did I do well? Where did I fall short? What am I grateful for? What fear needs to be faced? The page is your mirror, and clarity begins with reflection. Seventh, remember death, memento mori. Not to be morbid, but to be awake. To waste less time. To stop postponing life. Seneca warned, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." But the Stoic flips that. Live urgently, not recklessly, but deliberately. Call the friend, say the thing, do the work. Because tomorrow's not guaranteed, and that's what makes today priceless. Finally, practice silence. When things feel loud, pause. When people provoke, stay still. You don't need to react to everything. You don't need to comment on every insult, respond to every rumor, engage every fool. Silence is not weakness, it's sovereignty. The Stoics knew, when your energy is under control, your life is under control. All these tools, premeditation, athletic mindset, wide perspective, focus, discomfort, journaling, mortality, silence, they're not just theory, they're practice. They're how the Stoic survives the modern world, not by escaping it, but by meeting it with clarity, presence, and strength. The world will remain unstable, but you don't have to be. That is the Stoic advantage. You weren't born to be tossed around by every storm. You were born to anchor yourself in truth, to grow stronger through disruption, and to find clarity where others find only confusion. That is the path of the Stoic, not the path of avoidance, but of adaptation. The world may keep changing, but your duty does not. Return to your values, practice your tools, be like the emerald, unchanged by circumstance, yet still shining. If this video gave you something solid to hold on to in uncertain times, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's more wisdom waiting and more strength to build. And remember, it's not about controlling the chaos. It's about becoming the kind of person who thrives in the middle of it. Stay steady, stay clear, stay free.